My name is Dan, and my Lawtube Project is on the legal topic of torts. What is a tort? A tort is a civil wrong, other than a breach of contract. For an act to be a tort, there must be a legal duty owed by one person to another, a breach of that duty, and a harm done as a direct result of the action. There are three types of torts: intentional, unintentional, and strict liability. Let's go over intentional torts. For it to be intentional, an element of intent is required. There must be an injury and can be to a business, person, or property. Assault and battery. Assault is a crime and an intentional tort. It's a show of force that could reasonably make a person feel in danger of physical attack or harmful physical contact. Battery is intentional, unconsented physical contact by one person with another person. False imprisonment is any unlawful restraint of a person's liberty with legal justification. Defamation is false statements that harm the reputation, business, or property rights of a person. Spoken defamation is slander, while written is libel. Invasion of privacy is publicizing someone's private affairs that are of no legitimate public concern. In other words, it's using a person for publicity without permission. Emotional distress is outrageous conduct resulting in severe emotional distress to another person. And then there's fraud. Fraud is any kind of trickery used by one person to cheat another. Fraudulent misrepresentation is a false statement known to be false and meant to be misleading, which falls under fraud. Other intentional torts are trespass and nuisance, and intentional interference with contractual relations, all classify as intentional torts. Now we move on to unintentional torts. Unintentional torts are unintentional. It's where an actor brings about a consequence without intending it to occur, creating a risk. Negligence falls under unintentional torts. Negligence is a failure to exercise reasonable care in one's actions, resulting in injury and damage to another person or property. Defenses for negligence could be excuses, an act of God, for example, this lightning, assumptions of risk, vicarious liability, contributory and comparative negligence. Assumption of risk is a defense for negligence in instances where a person knows of the risk of an activity and that person accepts the risk. Vicarious liability is the doctrine that an employer is liable for the negligent performance of an employee. Therefore, if an employee in his or her role has a duty of care to another party and that employee breaches that duty of care, the employer will be vicariously liable for any damages. And the difference between contributory and comparative negligence is that comparative seeks to compensate the injured party for some of his or her injuries, while contributory is a total bar to any damage awarded to the plaintiff. Finally, strict liability is a liability imposed without finding of fault. Defendant did not intend to injure a plaintiff, and defendant adhered to the standard of care imposed on reasonable person. Liability is imposed because of the type of injury and should rest on that person in the best position to avoid harm. Then there's strict product liability. The elements required for this is product must be defective condition when defendant sells it. Defendant must normally be engaged in the business of selling or distributing the product. Product must be unreasonably dangerous to the user because of the condition. Plaintiff must incur physical harm to self or to property using or consuming the product. The defective condition must be the proximate cause of the injury or damage, and the goods must have not been substantially changed from time the product was sold to the time the injury was sustained. Thank you for watching my Lawtube project about torts.